Special thanks to our promotional partners at the American Philatelic Society.
The APS is the largest stamp collecting organization in the world, supporting collectors of any level worldwide.
For more information about membership and APS services, visit stamps.org.
I'm Charles Epting from H.R. Harmer, currently in St. Joseph, Missouri.
I'm Michael Cortese of Noble Spirit in Pittsfield, New Hampshire.
And this is Conversations with Philatelists. Now, last time we spoke, Michael, I was sitting in the terminal at LaGuardia Airport waiting to get on the plane. And I was coming to St. Joseph, Missouri. I've been here for about the last week. I just wanted to explain why the background was a bit different than my usual office setup. So we came to St. Joseph, Missouri in order to undertake catalog production. Normally, our freelancers come to New York City to help us produce our catalogs. But with the current restrictions, we figured rather than have the freelancers come to the office, it was easier to have the office come to the freelancers. So I'm currently in a circa 1880s Victorian home in St. Joseph, Missouri. This week I went to the stables where the Pony Express kept their horses, and tomorrow I'm going to the offices of the Pony Express at the Patey House Museum.
Wow.
In St. Joseph. So I just wanted to, again, explain the historic furniture and just a little bit different background than our viewers or listeners don't know, but our viewers may be wondering about.
Right. Yeah,
So that's all I got. I'm in, basically, long story short, I'm in Missouri instead of New York now. And next time we talk, I'll be back in New York.
Right. Yeah, you leave tomorrow, or?
And now tomorrow I'm driving cross country or halfway across the country because my car is here. Long story. So I get to drive. I'm going to make a couple of philatelically related stops and some non-philatelically related stops. I'm planning on hitting Hannibal, Missouri, where Mark Twain is from. Planning on hitting Springfield, Illinois, where Abraham Lincoln grew up. Both of whom have been on stamps. There's your philatelic connection. Then I was going to swing by the Lynn Stamp News and Scott Catalog offices outside of Dayton, Ohio, and then hit the American Philatelic Society.
Oh, nice.
Say hi to a couple of folks there on my drive through Pennsylvania. So it will be a philatelic road trip home.
Sounds awesome.
So next week when we talk, I'll get you up to speed on all that, and maybe we can flash a couple of pictures from the drive. Yeah,
that'd be really cool. I saw the photo of you in front of the Pony Express stables. That'd be a cool one.
Looking
to show people.
Way too happy, way too excited to be the Pony Express stables. But it was that was really thrilling for me, especially because in our next sale we have a couple of really significant Pony Express covers. We have the only Pony Express cover addressed to the Confederacy after it had seceded. So basically it's a cover to a foreign destination, even though you wouldn't normally think of it that way. And then a very neat Pony Express cover that was handed over to the Pony Express writer in Fort Bridger, Utah. So normally they originated from the Bay Area, San Francisco, Sacramento, Northern California, but this one was picked up along the way in Utah, which makes it kind of neat. So to have those two covers in our sale and then be standing where they would have arrived in St. Joseph 160 years ago is pretty neat.
If you got photos of those, can we just superimpose those?
We can superimpose those over the picture of me smiling. I'd love to show those.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, if we have the technological capability.
Yeah.
I think if we have a remedial.
Print it out and just mail me the photo, and I'm just going to try and tape it over the.
I'll fax it to you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We can. Never mind. I was going to say we can send it by pony. This is all a very long way of saying, who are we talking to today, Michael?
Today we're talking to George James from Stanley Gibbons. He's their director of British Commonwealth.
George is awesome. I've gotten to know George at a number of stamp events in Europe over the last couple of years, whether it's StampX or Monaco Phil. George is young, like us, is incredibly knowledgeable, unlike me. No, George is just, again, George is somebody, in addition to his philatelic knowledge and his prominence, at Gibbons, just a really great guy. I always, I enjoy seeing him at a show and always enjoy catching up with him. So it's been a while since either of us have made it over to Europe, obviously, for a stamp event. So it'll be good to catch up with him and see what's going on at Gibbons. And he also does these great videos that I think are worth mentioning because they've really, I think, found a nice little routine for keeping people informed. Again, not just sending out a newsletter or something, but actually a personable, in front of the camera video series to keep us all up to speed. I think is really great.
They show a couple collections. They talk about the history of Stanley Gibbons. It's pretty neat stuff. I definitely check it out.
Absolutely. I think it would be great to hear a little bit about that and how they're using technology to connect with customers when, not many people can visit the shop on the Strand these days. So it'll be fun to hear. Gibbons is synonymous with philately. I told a story last week about when I was entering the UK, when I was passing through customs, and the customs agent asked me where I would go to buy a penny black, and I said Stanley Gibbons, and then he believed I was a philatelist. So I think that proves it in the UK and many parts of the world. Stanley Gibbons is synonymous with philately. It's sort of like we have Scott here in the UK and former Commonwealth. It's Gibbons. So I think it'll be interesting to hear sort of an insider's perspective about what's going on there, how they've been handling the pandemic, but also just to hear about, George personally, his own story within the hobby. I think will be really great.
Yeah, how he got his start there and how it's been for him. What a day in the life looks like for him. I think that'd be pretty interesting.
Well, let's bring him in.
Yeah, here he is. Let's bring him in.
Right. Hello.
Thanks for joining us. This is great.
Oh, no problem. No, it's nice to get the invitation. Appreciate it.
Of course.
How have you been? How are things in the UK? How have you been holding up? How have the last 8 or so months been for you?
It's been strange, like as for everybody. It wasn't handled very well over here, especially compared to European neighbours. So it was odd having the sort of mega lockdown where you couldn't leave your house for anything but shopping was the hardest for sure. Blessed in a way. I'm still working. Stamps are still happening, because there's no real justice to who gets affected and who doesn't. So just got to be grateful to still be, happily working, and you've got to deal with the inconveniences because it's in everyone's interest really. So just try and stay positive, I guess.
Can you talk a little bit about that? What when you got your start at Stanley Gibbons and what you do there?
How far back do you want to go?
Well, let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah,
exactly. What's your first memory of stamps? How did you get wrapped up in this crazy world to begin with?
Christmas 1996 is my start. One of the Christmas presents that I got that year from my dad was a Stanley Gibbons starter pack. It had an all-world album, a pack of, world stamps, plastic tweezers, a magnifying glass that basically left everything the same size. All the all the stamp stuff for kids, and that was sort of the first step. I always enjoyed it as a kid, but I enjoyed it in the same way as I enjoyed, football and, aeroplanes and, all the kind of kid stuff. So it was never sort of, I always loved it, but it was never I never thought of it as a career. In terms of how I got into it after university was I actually went to a recruitment day. Because I'd always been interested. I'd dabbled really in stamp dealing while I was at university. It was good beer money, but I still hadn't really looked at it as a career. And then what actually happened is I went to a recruitment day, and it was for banks, just general career things, banks, accountants, all that kind of things. And I came back knowing that I didn't want to work for anyone there or with anyone there. And I was kind of like, oh, rats, I don't know what I'm going to do now. So I wrote to companies I found interesting, and I liked what they did. And Stanley Gibbons offered me a job in November of my final year. And yeah, I've been been in stamps ever since. Very lucky, really. I
yeah.
certainly wouldn't change.
Full circle, really. That's kind of funny. That's the company you ended up with. That's the company that got you started. You guys still sell the beginners packets?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. They're still there. I think it's slightly, well, the album's certainly been updated now,
right,
with modern country names. There's the same sort of raw ingredients there. A nice, interesting album. Kids tweezers and almost off paper killerware. It was all I needed to get started. And yeah, I don't think me or my dad thought it would lead to.
Yeah. Is he a collector himself?
Yeah, he is a family of collectors actually. So he had a kids collection of stamps, but he actually collects football programs, or soccer, as you call it in the States.
Yeah.
We support a team called Bournemouth, and he has the vast majority of games that Bournemouth have played almost since the war.
Oh wow!
Every season, home and away, and he loves it. So the collecting gene certainly passed out from my dad's side.
Yeah.
My mum doesn't have it, doesn't get it. She used to threaten to hoover up stamps when I was a kid. She's interested by it, but I can tell every time, the stamp goes for big money, or, we handle something really important. She's interested, she's proud, but there's still a sort of frown of just why, I don't understand. So she doesn't, she's super supportive, but she doesn't have the same gene. It's all from my dad's side of the family, for sure. Yeah. So
you reached out to them, and you began working there. What was your initial position there when you started working at Stanley Gibbons? And
so the job title was philatelic trainees. I don't know. It was like I can't remember the exact job title. It was something like junior philatelist, philatelic trainee. But essentially, the idea was that most people who start at Stanley Gibbons start work in the shop, because it's a very good way.
The floor, you mean?
Yeah. So we still have the retail shop, and it has all the books behind. Commonwealth. GB. People come in and say, "I want this SG number," or show me your, Bartoon, whatever, and you get the stock book out and show them, and it's a really good way to get to know. Well, firstly, and on a really junior thing, it's handle stamps professionally and safely, and you're not straight away handling tens of thousands of pounds worth of stamps with your inexperienced mitts. And also because of the inquiries that come in through the shop, it gets you to know the running of the company in terms of auctions, catalogues, publications, retail, all the stamp album range. It gives you a very broad knowledge of the customer base, what the company does, who does what. So I started in the shop. I then went on a tour of all the different departments. So I worked for a little while in auctions. My first office at Stanley Gibbons, I actually shared a folding table in a cupboard with a lovely man called David Flint. It was very... it wasn't the office. It's since been refurbished twice, actually, but at the time it wasn't designed for the number of people they had working there. So we literally, it was in a load of racking of all the auction boxes, and we just had a table pulled up with two PCs sat pretty much side by side, and described stamps for the postal auctions, in that tiny room. So that was my first sort of proper stamp describing job, was in an auction department. And then in the end, a lady actually retired in Commonwealth department. It was a man who was managing director at the time called Richard Watkins, who offered me the job there. It was sort of a Commonwealth almost sales / describing role there, and I ended up taking that. So the idea was to get a full apprenticeship in all departments, but in the end, because that job came available and I'd done all right, I guess, I ended up taking that job. Yeah.
You touch on something that I think is interesting that maybe us Americans can't really grasp as fully. in that Gibbons is everything from a catalog and publications company and a retail storefront and an auction company, and they produce album pages. That you really have your hands in every facet of the hobby, versus the States where it's much more segmented and segregated, I would say. What is it like being surrounded by, and how much interaction do you have with the catalog staff, with the retails? I went to the retail storefront a couple of years ago, and that still seems like a rite of passage for a stamp collector. That was really exciting for me. What is it like, again, having so many different segments to the company under one roof?
So it's a huge asset, and it allows you to get a very in-depth and rounded view of the hobby. So a lot of the as you say, a rite of passage is not just going through the shop. For a lot of the traders who have stands at Stampex and international shows, you'd be amazed at how many have at one time worked at Stanley Gibbons in one capacity or another. But there's a lot more link between departments than people realise. So obviously a lot of our retail customers in Commonwealth departments buy albums from us. So you need to know the range and what pages they want. Naturally, there's a link between. One of the best things for customers at Stanley Gibbons is that actually when people come to us with stamps, sometimes we can give them more money than they get in auction just by buying it straight away, because we know someone for it. So it's a quick turnover for everybody. Sometimes it goes to auction. So there's always a huge link between, especially auctions and retail in terms of what's best for the customer. And then in terms of the catalogue staff, the pricing's actually done. Not many people know this, but for the really important, well, they're all important, but for the core business that we do is the stamps that are in Part 1 or the Commonwealth catalogue, which I'm sure you will use. But all the pricing in that is done by the Commonwealth team, not the catalogue department. It's done by people who actually buy and sell stamps every day.
Huh.
So it's a monumental task every year, and it takes months and months, literally almost done line by line. But so we have all the departments are very, very closely linked and generally work very, very closely together. Certainly much more so than most people realise. And as you say, it's we get asked that question a lot, especially by American clients, because there's nothing comparable, on your side of the pond. Yeah.
How many people work there, if I can ask that?
So including Baldwin's, which is our, we have a numismatist coin company that work with us as well. I think it's about 65 approximately, and we have 2 sites. So we have a warehouse down in Ringwood, and that houses the catalogue team, the publications, so all the the albums and accessories. There's 2 offices, but I believe it's about 65. But hopefully when this goes out, the CEO's not. So yeah, it's not. it's not a scientific. I think it's about 60. Yeah, 65, something like that. Yeah.
That's great, and that's great that there's so much.
Company.
I was just going to say.
I'm sorry. I think there's a lag. You go ahead.
Oh no, not a problem. I was just going to comment on how fantastic it is that everybody works together, really, and it's not just segregated. That you can keep all those parts talking to each other.
Yeah, so certainly under historically, it's caused a lot of problems at Stanley Gibbons that departments weren't working together closely enough. And it's something that the current owners realised the importance of, that they've really strongly encouraged, and it's to everybody's benefit, both internally and in terms of what we can offer customers as well. So it's certainly a huge asset that we can offer, whatever solution for the client, straight sale, auction, whatever, even private treaty things if we can't, and it's that clients really value that service of that, it's a huge asset, and that's why it's why the current owners, when they took over, it was something they really pushed to, make everything more streamlined, get everyone working together, and stop that sort of silo mentality that had been allowed to not build up, but just the way the processes were in the sort of old days, it was sort of slightly adversarial between the departments, which wasn't healthy, and it's something that they immediately broke down on taking over. Yeah.
Obviously, the hobby's been shifting more and more online over the last decade or two. But for a company like Gibbons, I would imagine that foot traffic into the store is still very important. Shows like London 2020 or StampX are very important. How has it been for you during the pandemic, not being able to meet customers face to face as easily? And what have you been doing? Have there been projects that maybe you had considered before the pandemic that now got pushed to the front of the line, or have you been brainstorming at all how to adapt to certainly what is going on right now and what may be the new normal moving forward?
Yeah, so it's certainly been a challenge. I smiled when you asked about projects, because I was on my way to the international in New Zealand when it all the lockdown happened, and I was briefly stranded in Australia, which is a lovely place, but not when you've got one suitcase and some stamps with you. It certainly didn't feel like a holiday. So yes, it changed our plans. All the client visits that I was planning on the way back couldn't happen because obviously borders were closing. Obviously a lot of those still haven't happened. So the plan was to fly back from New Zealand via 2 or 3 clients and go and see them. So that's been the biggest challenge, is not being able to go and physically see large collections. Obviously rules change all the time and collectors are understanding, but certainly there's challenges doesn't even cover it. There's people that I used to go and see almost every month that now, because of whatever health conditions they've got or their COVID rating in the area, now you just can't. So it has certainly changed the way we work. Retail side hasn't really changed what we do. Obviously, there's less face-to-face, but most of our initial contact was by phone or email anyway. But as you both know, stamp shows are hugely important for even new clients, sitting down and talking to your oldest clients for many years. It's been a huge loss, it's tough, but I don't think it'll be forever. And I hope most people will be able to adapt in the short term. Yeah.
So how do you balance the auctions between the retail store, between the catalog? How do the team that you're a part of in the British Commonwealth, just you guys, how do you balance what goes where and what time you dedicate to the catalog compared to what items you send to the retail store, what items you just...
So each department has, so the philatelists, there are a team who do just the auctions. They describe for auctions. It's their job to deliver however many auctions a year, all the execution of that is their responsibility. My Commonwealth team, it's our core responsibility is retail sales. Yes, there's transferability, but that's what we are judged on as a department. But naturally, the overlap comes where, we took a collection in last week where we said, actually, we can buy this for much more than you'll get at auction straight away, but the rest we'll put in auction. Because we think you might do better there, or as close. So there's each team has their own responsibilities, and then the other thing is we have, for example, when foreign material comes in, we have a colleague called Michaela in auctions who's the best expert for it. A lot of obviously the really specialised Commonwealth material. We're better placed to describe and assist with it, so we help auctions there. So it's almost a sort of horses for courses thing in terms of what's best for the material, what's best for the client and the company. So it generally comes. It's generally quite an easy decision as to who does what. But in terms of like how it doesn't overlap and become a free-form mess, it's every team knows what they have to deliver each year. So it's just how everyone can help each other in a way. Yeah, it's very collaborative, certainly in a way that it wasn't when I started at Stanley Gibbons.
How long ago did you start?
Goodness me, I was, what would I have been, 9 years ago, I think.
Wow.
9 years ago, and then I worked at Spink for 2.5 years, I think, in the mid period, and then came back in the end. Yeah. So yeah, 9 years since I started, but I think about 3 years since I came back to Stanley Gibbons. Yeah.
For you personally, what do you get most excited for to cross your desk? What colony, what era, what is it that really gets your gears going when you're breaking down a collection or writing something up? What's your own personal, what are you looking for?
There's a number of prongs to that. So the thing I get most excited about is when I've not seen an area before. So if say a collection of a country that I've not handled before, there's or something I've not seen before, or something where I can actually learn long term, something valuable and add to my knowledge. So that's absolutely the most exciting thing for me, is when I look at a collection and think, I don't know. And it's actually the reason that I love working in retail, is because in auction, if you don't know, you don't need to know precisely, because you can put an estimate on it. You can fall back to extensions, for example. Of course you need to know. You need to know if something's genuine. You need to know, roughly what it's worth. But for retail, Stanley Gibbons offers a lifetime guarantee on everything they sell. So you can't sell something and then send it on an extension.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, everything we offer has that. If your grandchildren find out there's something wrong with it, Stanley Gibbons will refund it. That means that you have to make absolutely sure you know exactly what you're selling before you sell it, which is a high standard, and it's often really difficult. But it's a challenge that I love and I relish, and and I know my colleagues do as well. It's certainly the best part of the job, is knowing that you have to hold yourself to that highest standard. But in terms of what colony or what material, my passion in philately has always been revenues. So I collect and exhibit salon revenues, and Commonwealth revenues in particular have always fascinated me. I also do a lot of Great Britain revenues. I publish articles. Eventually I'd like to publish catalogues for both salon revenues and Great Britain revenues, but it's so time consuming to write those they're both fairly advanced projects, but getting that last 10% done takes longer than the opening sort of 70 or 80%, once you get down to the real brass tacks, especially for a catalogue listing. So it's one day they'll be finished, but I used to say, I'm writing books, but 2 years later they're still not finished. I just say, one day I'll finish it. So yeah, the revenues always appeal to me, just because there's so much research still to do in that area. The catalogues that exist in the area, the price catalogues that exist in the area, are, especially this side of the pond. This is a place where you guys are way ahead of Europe in terms of revenue pricing. You've had the US revenues in Scott. There's an established market for it. The catalogue depth and detail is at a level that, by comparison, what we have over here is just laughable. In many areas, particularly when it comes to pricing, there's a stamp in my own collection that I paid, £2,500 for, which is there's a main revenue catalogue over here, and it's priced in there, I think, at £50. So,
wow,
The pricing over here needs it does need updating, and even for European revenues, the last major catalogue was published in I think 1918, 4-bit. So we're sort of literally 100 years behind you guys on revenue pricing. So there is a sort of a fantastic amount of research and things to find out about it. I do a lot of I spend a lot of time with the Revenue Society here in the UK. There's all sorts of exciting projects and publications going on for various colonies, countries. They're at the forefront of most of that research. They do really interesting talks and meetings. Online now, they used to do meetings. But that's always been my core passion, is revenues. And then in terms of if I could pick something to do every day, my sort of third prong of that question, I love Japanese occupation of Malaya. It's my favourite thing to describe. The challenge of the chops and the forgeries and shapes of the characters, even the history behind it. Well, I've always been fascinated by World War II and any sort of documents or social history that goes with that kind of material. Has always fascinated me. So yeah, JEPOC and revenues is the two favourite things. But if it's something that I've just not seen before, that's probably the best of the three. Yeah.
Why do you think the revenue catalogs are so far behind? Is there not much of a market for revenues over there? Or?
There is now. Revenues have a bit of a checkered history here. So revenues historically were absolutely huge. There was early on there was a journal called Morley's Philatelic Journal, just for revenues. There were major revenue dealers, and that all lasted until probably the 20s or 30s. Now, at some point, a lot of revenue issues started. Usage of the stamps declined in, particularly in this country. The later you get, it's the reverse with revenues. It's the reverse of normal issues in that the later you get, for GB revenues in particular, the scarcer they are. So most George VI and Queen Elizabeth revenues are much scarcer than Queen Victorian ones because the usage has declined to a point. So I think usage declined. I think I'm not actually sure why, but the reputation of revenues declined. I don't exactly know why, but I've got in my grandfather's album, which I've inherited, it says, it's like advice for the collector at the front. It says, don't fill your album with revenues and tobacco labels, stick to proper stamps, So, even advice to collectors was just ignore the stuff. The market's rapidly catching up now, because in particular for Commonwealth and GB, I suspect this is true for other European countries as well. But I don't have the same depth of knowledge there. But for GB and Commonwealth, the designers were the same, the printers were the same, the depth of proof, archive material is the same. You can really tell a complete exhibit, a complete story with what survived. So things out of the Delarue archive for revenues are often more spectacular than the stamp material because they're larger format issues. There's sort of a myriad of different uses. Obviously, revenue documents usually have the story of their use on them. You can calculate the rates very easily. There's a lot of really, actually quite amusing revenue documents out there. There's a Nyasaland document, which I've got somewhere, where there's paying a fine, and there's a transcript of the court case on there. And the guy was accused of stealing a blanket and some shorts, and he turned up to defend himself wearing the shorts he was accused of stealing. So yeah, you have to pay the fine. So there's also, and there's absolutely, there's things like opium tax, things that just blow your mind nowadays. Printed revenues for opium imports and things like that. It's but people are definitely caught up. But historically, I'm not I think their reputation is declining. The other thing is, I think when you look back, particularly at South American issues, I think a lot of South American countries at the time, we're talking probably 40s, 50s, used them as almost a money-making exercise. There's South American sets from the time with 60 values all in different colours, and you cannot possibly have needed that many. And I think that in the same way that new issues of, some people say, trash the reputation of some post offices and countries, new policies and new issue policies and all that, I think it might have started to get that way with revenues. And it took a long time for the market to recover. But the Revenue Society in Great Britain, I believe I'm right in saying it wasn't actually founded until about 1989, 1990, something like that.
Wow.
Very, very late adoption. But I can tell you as a collector that people are certainly catching up, because things I used to be able to pick up for nothing years ago, those days are long gone. Absolutely.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, exactly. As people have realised, there used to be the end of a lot of, even single vendor auctions. People at auction houses used to just lob the revenues, fiscals in a box and just put, box of revenues. And no, not nowadays, which is good. It is good.
Yeah.
From a selfish perspective. Yeah, but I am really pleased that it's caught up, or it's catching up at this side of the market. I mean, the next step for certainly Great Britain and Commonwealth is to get better research and cataloguing, and there's a lot of people over here doing incredible work with listing. Andrew McClellan, in particular, for Commonwealth, has an amazing website called revd.com. So he's a vicar who collects revenue, so he's the revenue reverend. And there's REVD, and he's got amazing collections, and he does phenomenal listings for Commonwealth, and they're the best of their type. But even those aren't priced. So we're getting there slowly, and it needs to catch up. But yeah, I wish I could give you a better answer.
No, I mean that perfectly explains it.
Yeah. It's always been a mystery to me. I remember when I first started collecting them, I used to think, how is Delu Archive die-proof from 18 to 17? You used to be able to pick them up for sort of 150, 200 pounds. It was, and any postage stamp from the same period was £400 or £500. It never made any rational sense to me. Just as stunning as the others.
Yeah.
And, even look at Persian rug has always been in the States. It's like a hugely important item for generations, and then you've got things of not probably Persian rug's iconic and have such a design and high value, but you've certainly got comparable things in Commonwealth which are spectacularly rare, very, very beautiful, wonderfully printed, that just didn't have the same appreciation. And there's no real logic to it in many ways. Yeah.
It sounds like they're getting there though, which is great for the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just buy them fast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Certainly. Even if you look 5 years ago to today, it's amazing how fast it's coming on. But when you look at it at sort of macro level, it's amazing how slow or how long it's taken and how slow it's been overall. So it's sort of been like that, and then flown up in popularity in recent years. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing for everybody, really. Yeah. Speaking
about price changes and habits of collectors, have you been seeing anything since the pandemic started? Any buying habits changing in the clients that you deal with, or any of the new material coming in that's weirder, more different than material you would have seen before the pandemic?
The big change we've noticed is the strength of auction bidding. Some of the realizations we've seen in the market, in the nicest possible way, because I know people just want what they want on the day, but some of them defy rational sense.
Right.
And I think it's because people are at home, they're more in tune with their wants list. We've certainly had a lot more wants lists. People have got more time to spend with their collections, which can only be a good thing. But some of the realizations we've seen in our own auction compared to even 12 months ago have been significantly higher. Also, when we're, bidding on auctions, for clients or whatever, some of the realizations for material that often isn't. Yes, it's rare, but it's material you can pick up if you're patient enough has been significantly higher than pre-pandemic levels. So the strength of the market. We were all worried at first about the market. The strength and depth of auction bidding has been phenomenal under the pandemic conditions. I don't think there's been a change in the material, but I think, again, from a philatelic perspective, the fact that people are at home, it is a sedentary hobby that you can do. It's a COVID safe hobby, isn't it? Stamp collecting. Yeah. It's in your own house. You can do it online. You can get your post. And I think for that reason, I know a lot of my things I love to do I can't do anymore, and I've spent a lot of more time with my own collection. So I think it's easy to explain, but the market's been very strong throughout.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Do you think that's the fact that it's a COVID hobby? That's the main reason that you're seeing this in the prices and the want lists, or do you find people are looking to almost use it to diversify portfolios with better individual stamps or
I don't think so. I don't think it's. I don't think there's any investment driver.
Yeah.
Personally, certainly not this side of the pond. I don't know what it's like over there. The real things that I can't get my head around are, we've seen stamps of quite poor quality sell for quite high prices. That is something I can't explain. So we've seen stamps that are toned, creased, damaged in some way, go for high percentage of, very, very strong realizations for a nice copy, let alone a toned one. So I can't, the impatient side of that. So catalog prices in a sort of, £2,000 to £5,000 range, where, yes, major rarities, but major rarities which, if you're patient enough, you can almost always see a nice one within 12 to 18 months. It doesn't, that loss of patience I can't explain, and isn't rational, and I think it's just people want to almost strike. I think I'm purely speculating, because I can't rationalize it myself, but I think people are almost trying to strike while the iron's hot, and they're on it, and they've got the time to really make progress. I think they're maybe tolerating lower condition standards, but I certainly don't think that's a good thing. And it's certainly, in the case of buying damaged stamps, it's not money they're going to get back.
Yeah.
Which is why I can't rationalize it. But yeah, it's I just think it is because the prices, I think is such a COVID secure hobby that its popularity, or, well, I say maybe not popularity, that the amount of time people can spend on it has risen significantly. And I think that's shown in the interest in, auction, in particular auction realizations. Yeah.
Have you been changing the way that you value things in the retail shop? I know Charles said he'd been to Stanley Gibbons, the store before, but I actually, even though I was born in London near Stanley Gibbons, I left before they handed out accents, but I'd never actually been on the floor. Have you changed your pricing accordingly in the retail shop? Or is that the final? You put £4,000. That's the final price.
No. So pricing wise for the retail shop, the prices of what we sell are updated at least annually, anyway. And also, I don't think if we'd done it already for COVID, we would spend our whole lives changing prices. There's millions of stamps in the shop, so it's not something you can just be like, put that one up now.
So are you seeing things sell?
It's hard enough doing a 700-page catalogue every year, once a year. So reacting to individual events, but actually, there hasn't been a huge change in Commonwealth levels. So because it's looked at regularly enough anyway, we haven't changed specifically for COVID, basically.
But things aren't just flying off the shelves in the retail store, so to speak.
Well, it depends. Again, we sell such a broad amount of stock that some areas it's always the same. Some areas fly out as soon as it. I told a client last week he sort of broken a company record because someone had been on the website. I think it was literally 10 or 15 minutes, and he rang up to buy it. But then others don't. But in terms of the retail store, you wouldn't believe what London is like at the moment. The footfall on the Strand where we're based is, I wouldn't like to say, but it's still eerily quiet. A lot of the footfall on the Strand used to be from office workers, and shops, banks, all that kind of thing, and they're just not open at the moment. So the retail store doesn't have the foot traffic it used to, but it's not indicative of a sort of long-term trend. So, in fact, before it had been getting better and better and better before March. So, there's no need to sort of, knee-jerk and start, changing prices willy-nilly. And, we'll review it at the end of the year. Well, I say at the end of the year. The catalog's published at the end of the year, but prices are reviewed constantly all the way through. So I think it will just be reviewed as normal. But there's been no sea change as such in, overall.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to ask, you've been doing these videos for the Gibbons YouTube page the last couple of months. Yeah. What has the response been like to those? It seems like you're really, trying to provide a service, helping people who maybe don't know what they have. Maybe they inherited something or they're dusting off their childhood album. What sort of feedback have you gotten from those videos?
Generally very good, actually. It's been very nice. A lot of the comments were to do with the lack of mic, but at the time we were in, they're right. It was they were filmed. You can tell just from my hair that it was mega lockdown. I had, I looked like a stick of broccoli at the time. There was, so we were filming them pretty much on bare minimum in a small room. It was echoey at the time, but we knew it was something we wanted to do. They're going to get increasingly professional over time because people now can come into the business and help us. We can do it safely now in a way that we couldn't before. At the time, there were between 4 and 6 people in the office every day because it was literally bare essential staff who were filming them for the first ones. In terms of what we're trying to achieve with them, there's a lot of essentially really interesting things that we're all very passionate about in the company, and that generally, if we find very interesting, we found that customers will as well, and also there's a sort of permanent record. It was the funniest one I've had is we had a cover in auction recently. India used in Penang, and I was you can check it on stamp boards. I was berated for not wearing white gloves for holding the cover, and it's such thin paper. White gloves wouldn't even allow you to pick it up. It's and that's the other thing in a decade, and a decade of working. Well, more than that, I don't think I've ever seen a pair of white gloves, and it was the funniest criticism. Using clean hands to handle a cover. So it's funny. But the reception from clients has been very, very good. And what surprised me is, if you look at the views, one of the ones that the marketing team wanted to do was how to mount a stamp. Mounting and using guillotines and putting things on the page. And I thought, why is everyone knows that? And actually, we've had so many questions of like, oh, I didn't use a guillotine, or people have actually found it helpful and things that. So I think we're going to do more on the sort of basics, Stamps 101, just to get people slowly laddered up in terms of knowledge about the hobby and how it works. And then, yeah, I mean, it's just a wonderful tool. And seeing, guys like Graham on YouTube, and basically the more we can get out there on YouTube in particular, because it's much more of a sort of tactile hobby than people realise. Putting it into almost 3D and telling people the history and the stories around and the history around the items is absolutely invaluable if we're ever going to get seriously new people interested in. Because if you just look at it as one stamp for this price, it's not the same. This is why this is important. This is why this is interesting. This is how this was printed. The stories behind the items that we sell are what gives them their value, and it's probably the best tool we've got of getting it out there. And I think you'll see a lot more from us. But the only thing I'd say is forgive us for the first 4 or 5, because they were just done with 5 people in the company. I'm sat there on filming almost on a mobile phone. It was the best we could do at the time, but it was it's been good. It's been good. I mean, I'm glad you've seen it, because obviously we didn't know how popular they'd be or how many comments we'd get and all that. So it's nice to know that they're being enjoyed.
Yeah, well received.
Yeah,
they're great. I'm looking forward to more of those. Yeah,
there'll be a lot more for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining us. This has been great. Was looking forward to seeing everyone in the UK scene at London 2020 this year, and can't wait to see you again in person. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us virtually.
No, thank you so much for the invitation. It's really nice, and I love what you guys are doing. So I've been listening through the back ones. I liked Eric Jackson's one, obviously.
Yeah.
Revenue buff myself. Yeah, his was really good.
We're doing what we can to undo the historical wrongs against revenue collecting.
Yeah, well, no, you guys, there's none on your side. It was all a sort of weird Europe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was weird. It's just like weird. I don't know. Yeah, you guys are way ahead of us with revenues. So but thank you. Yeah, Eric's was fascinating. There's been loads of other good ones, but keep it going.
We appreciate you joining us, and look forward to making it back to the Strand as soon as borders open up again.
Yeah, you guys will always be welcome, and I'll see you at a show as soon as we can. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Well, that was a lot of fun. My experience with Stanley Gibbons, the Strand, I went there for the first time a couple of years ago. I was expecting just to walk out with maybe a $1 first day cover or a catalog, something cheap. I was like, I'm just going to get something cheap as a souvenir for my visit to the Strand. And I'm standing there at the checkout counter. Olivia was with me, my girlfriend. And she's had some, again, cheap first day covers. I'm like, all right, I'm making it out of here without spending too much money. And then I swear they knew I was coming, because under the glass in front of the cash register, it had like spotlights on it. It was a penny black with the initial CE. They saw me coming a mile away. Somehow they knew my initials.
Mm-hmm.
And that CE penny black was right there. And I thought, if you're going to buy a penny black, you should buy it at Gibbons, and it has my initials. And they
made with original gum, only cost £6,000.
Luckily, it was used. It does have 4 margins. It was one of the cheaper plates, but they knew a sucker when they saw one. They probably got a stack of every combination of initials in the back, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's name is CE, slip it in." So that was my treat to myself. That was actually the first time Olivia and I had ever met. So here I've known her for a grand total of about 24 hours, and she's wondering why I'm spending so much on a little tiny piece of paper that's 180 years old or whatever. So that was, if she didn't leave me then, I'd say that's a pretty good sign for things to come.
It's a glowing endorsement of the hobby.
It is. But again, that was my first experience with Gibbons. Since then I'm lucky to have gotten to know George, it shows at various things, and it was really fun to catch up with him when when we started kicking around this idea. He was one of the people I really wanted to talk to, and I'm glad that we could make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to have him, and it's fantastic what he's doing with the videos on Stanley Gibbons and the YouTube channel, and it's interesting to hear how they listened to what the people wanted, and they're going in that direction. It sounded like that they had a broad idea of what they wanted to do, and then they saw where they needed to go or where the people wanted them to go, and they're going to fill that void.
This was my favorite kind of interview too, because we simultaneously got George of Stanley Gibbons and George the stamp collector.
Yes.
And I'm really glad that we both got him in his professional capacity, as well as just he's a collector. He's like all of us. So
yeah,
I like when we can sort of strip back the get past the title, get past his career, and just talk to him as a fellow collector. It was a lot of fun. So this was great. People can find us as always on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcast, Google Podcast,
all the podcasts.
Podbean, all the podcasts.
PhilatellyPodcast.com is the website. Philately Podcast.
I don't want to interrupt, but I actually just went on PhilatellyPodcast.com for the first time the other day.
Oh yeah, what do you think?
I can confirm the link does work.
That's great.
That is indeed our website for anybody who wants to check it out. So
that's fantastic.
If you saw a little spike in the hit, it went from 0 to 1 viewer. That was me checking it out.
I think we've got a couple more than 0, but no, I have not checked the analytics on that. But we get emails.
And the email is philatelypodcast@gmail.com for anyone who wants to reach out to us.
There. If anyone wants to reach out to us, we are pretty quick with the emails back to people sometimes. I haven't been so quick with the YouTube comments.
You can find out for yourself.
Yeah, find out for yourself
if I
reply
comment.
to your
Yeah, exactly. Send Michael a tweet. We really like the engagement. We really like hearing from you guys.
Yeah.
So until next time, this is Conversations with Philatelists.
That's very true. See you next time, Charles.
See you, Michael.
Bye.